Okay, today I'll be discussing Jose Causadia's article, What is Culture? Systems of People, Places, and Practices. Okay, so when most people hear the word culture, they immediately think about food, language, or holidays. While those are certainly part of culture, Causadias argues that culture is much more complex than that. His goal is to give us clearer way to understand culture by introducing what he calls the P model, which explains culture as a system made up of people, places, and practices. Throughout the presentation, I'm going to explain each of these components and why they're important, specifically for educators. So, why redefine culture? The author begins by pointing out that culture is often described as a fuzzy concept because there isn't one universally accepted definition. Depending on the field you're studying, culture can mean very different things. One problem that many traditional definitions is that they treat culture as something people simply possess, almost like a personality trait. Casadias argues that this way of thinking is too limited because culture is constantly changing. It develops through interactions among people, the environments they live in, and the activities they participate in. So instead of asking, what culture does this person have? He encourages us to ask, how is culture being created and experienced in this situation? That shift in thinking is really the foundation of this model, the P model. So, what is the P model? According to Casadias, culture is made up of three interconnected components: people, places, and practices. None of these exist independently. Instead, they constantly influence one another. People shape the places they live in, places influence the practices people engage in, and those practices influence future generations. Another important part of the model is power. The author argues that culture isn't neutral. It can be used to reinforce existing systems and inequalities, or it can be used to challenge them and create positive change. I really like this model because it reminds us that culture isn't static. It's something that's constantly evolving. People. The first component is people. People include families, communities, social groups, populations. Culture develops through our relationships with other people. At the same time, individuals also influence culture. Every generation brings new ideas, values, perspectives that can reshape cultural traditions. As a teacher, this really resonates with me because every classroom is made up of students with unique backgrounds. Their experiences, languages, and family traditions all become part of the learning environment. Rather than expecting students to fit into one classroom culture, we should recognize that they help create the culture every day. The second component is places. Places includes homes, schools, neighborhoods, and even larger institutions like community or governments. The environments where people spend their time have a huge influence on developing and learning. Two students might have similar abilities, but their opportunities can be very different depending on where they live or the resources available to them. As educators, this reminds us that learning does not happen in isolation. Students bring experiences from home and their communities into the classroom, and those experiences shape how they learn. Practices. This is the third component. Practices are the everyday actions that make culture visible. They include traditions, language, celebrations, routines, teaching methods, and interactions with others. These practices are how culture is passed from one generation to the next. For example, family traditions, storytelling, classroom routines are even the way teachers encourage collaboration are all cultural practices. They communicate values and expectations, often without us even realizing it. This really highlights that culture isn't just something we believe, it's something we actually do. The final idea the author adds to his model is power. And I think this is what makes his framework especially meaningful. He explains that culture can influence who has opportunities, who has access to resources, and whose voices are heard. Power can exist through relationships between people, through institutions like schools, or through everyday practices that became normalized over time. As educators, this is important because we also hold power. We make decisions about curriculum, classroom expectations, participation, and assessment. Being aware of that responsibility allows us to create more equitable learning environments where every student feels valued and included. My takeaways. To wrap up, I think the biggest takeaway for this article is that culture isn't just a list of traditions and customs. It's a living system made up of people, places, and practices. All are connected through relationships and influenced by power. For me, this article reinforces the importance of looking beyond individual students and considering the larger systems that shape our experiences. When we understand those systems, we're better able to build inclusive classrooms and create learning opportunities wherever a student can succeed. And this is the article that I read.